Welcome to CarePod, a safe place to educate, inspire, and renew the caregiver. Listen in with our host, Dr. Kiplee Bell, as she interviews different experts along the caregiving journey.
So I'm really excited to sit with a phenomenal thought leader in the space of caregiver youth, which is a topic that I haven't yet discussed here on the CarePod, and really excited particularly to understand the working and the empowerment of caregivers that are young, serving this population. So I'm here with affectionately called Dr. Connie, formerly Dr. Connie Siskowski of the American Family Caregiver Association.
American Association of Caregiving Youth.
I'm sorry, American Association of Caregiver Youth. Dr. Siskowski of the American Association of Caregiving Youth. So I'm really, really excited to have you, and I thank you for taking the time to sit with me today. So I always begin the conversations with our guests why. What brought you to the table? What brought you to this work? How it empowers you, drives you day to day in this space.
How it keeps me off the streets. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I took care of my grandfather when I was in middle school, and my parents were divorced, and he was my hero. You know, he taught me a lot of things. He gave me 25 cents allowance. It was a big deal then. And he worked until he was part-time until he was 84. And as happens often when you retire, your health declines, as his did. And my mom worked 2 jobs. She was a single mom. And my grandmother, she just didn't have that caregiving gene, the compassion that's really needed. And so I just stepped up to the plate. But at times it was traumatic. And, you know, way back then, which was in like the late 1950s, trauma in children wasn't recognized. And so as his health deteriorated, like he was tall, and he was 6 feet, and like to help with mobility, to help with some personal care, I gave him his medicine. I trimmed his mustache, but I moved into the living room to be closer in case he needed anything. And so one night I got up at 2:00 a.m. to give him his medication, and I found him no longer breathing. I can still feel, you know, like the coolness of his skin. So that was a big trauma. But the other thing was, I don't think I ever expected that he was going to die, you know, so that was kind of a shock. Then, you know, since he was like my rock, my hero, I didn't have someone else in my family. And so, you know, there was that absence, just as, you know, some of our kids experience the death of a parent. That's kind of what it felt like, but it wasn't recognized. And so professionally, he had heart disease. I went on to be a cardiac nurse, you know, and I did a lot of things all over the healthcare spectrum. But personally, I was really challenged with, you know, always seeking that love, you know, and not making good decisions about who provided it. So I moved to Florida in 1990, and there, after another failed marriage, I was in counseling, and it was pointed out to me that the trauma that I had experienced as a child had contributed to some of my bad choices. I became involved in family caregiving issues. I was always kind of a little entrepreneurial and had begun a company called MDTU to do physician house calls. And the genesis of that was doing home care and seeing, you know, an employed family caregiver whose mom was bedbound, who had to make transportation arrangements to get her to the doctor. And when she finally did, And by the way, it's not always comfortable to take somebody into the doctor's office on a stretcher. It's not appreciated. So by the time she was able to take off from work and make all those arrangements, and they checked her mom's blood count, they found that she was so anemic she had to be admitted to the hospital and get blood transfusions because she had like a small, slow leak of blood in her bowels and stuff. So, I had been at a conference and I learned about a company in California called 1-800-CALL-DOC. And I thought, wow, and technology was starting to advance. So you could do lab work in the home, you could do x-rays in the home. So anyhow, so I got people together. I started this company called MDTU, and it was during that time that I learned about family caregiving. I had the opportunity to go to the first international conference on family caregiving in London back in 1998. And that was kind of a pivotal year because, again, as a result of what I had seen, I was in Washington one day waiting to go into a meeting at the National Council on the Aging. And I looked down and there's a pamphlet called Faith in Action. And it was from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And they were working to provide volunteers to people who were homebound. And so I went back and I met with my minister. Bottom line is that I formed a nonprofit with the help of people from the community. And it was called Boca Raton Interfaith in Action. And it was to provide volunteers to people who were homebound and respite for family caregivers. And so it just served a local area. And then I remarried, and my husband traveled a lot. And he said, "Why don't you go back to school?" So I thought, okay, I can do that. I went back to get my PhD to have a bigger voice for all family caregivers, never expecting my research, which was the first in the country, to identify a large population of middle and high school students in public schools in Palm Beach County. So, yeah, it went to over 12,000 kids. More than 4,000 were either missing school, not doing their homework, having trouble focusing, or some combination. So I don't know, I'm sure we have all been under stress at some time. And you can't learn when you're under stress. And, yet it was a time when the schools were starting to look at what's wrong with the schools, what's wrong with the teachers. They weren't really thinking about what else is going on in this child's life that is affecting them academically. So they weren't ready to do anything. So I shared the data with people I had come to know nationally. A meeting was convened in New York, and then the Administration on Aging funded the first ever, and still only ever, national survey of kids who are caregivers. And that was released in 2005. And it showed that there were at least 1.3 million children ages 8 to 18 in that role. Who knew, right?
Who knew? I mean, it's so profound on so many levels. It really is. If I can just pause a minute there, because there's so much to unpack, just in what you said. But what do you say? Well, a couple of things. What did although that early traumatic experience or identified as trauma, right? Feeling the coldness of his skin, right? What, though, did that experience teach you, or how did it mold you in the context of caregiving and being in a multi-generational household?
Well, I think another important factor was my faith. That was an area that my grandfather and I were close with, that the rest of my family was not. And so that has kind of propelled me. And so essentially, when I did this large survey in Palm Beach County, the principal investigator called me and said, "Connie," said, "do you know that the results of your section," and we called it a family health section, "were the most profound of the whole survey?" And I thought, wow. And so it was like I felt like I had to do something about it. So essentially, it was a calling, what people might call a call.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that has kind of followed me. Opportunities were placed along the way to help me grow and begin this work.
Absolutely. And therefore help shaped the hearts and minds being an ombudsman or a caregiver umbrella for these children, which it's remarkable. It really and truly is.
Speaking
What
of
do
this,
go ahead.
speaking of hearts, so from the very beginning, hearts have been at the center of our work, and they're inclusive, right? It doesn't matter what culture, what religion, they're symbolic. And because we serve such a diverse population, I can wear a heart. I couldn't feel comfortable wearing a cross because I don't want to put up any barriers to anyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I took it to the extreme, right? So I had to have a hip replacement, and I had made a commitment several years ago that I would always wear a heart somewhere. I had to have this surgery. As a nurse, I knew that I couldn't have any jewelry. So I had a dream one night, and it said, "Well, why don't you get a tattoo?" And so people my age, and whatever.
Yeah.
So I think to my husband, and he was like, "Really?" And but I decided, that that's what I would do. And so I asked him if he would like to go with me, and he said no. And so I found this place, and I got up my courage, and I went and I got a little tattoo on my arm. I don't know if you can see it, but
I
yeah.
can. I can. Yes. 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 Oh wow.
So that, then I could always have a heart no matter what. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and all of our work, all of our logos have a heart at the center. AACY does. We have a logo for the Caregiving Youth Project, which is what we began when we got funding after the results of the national survey. We began a Caregiving Youth Institute that also has a heart at the center. So that's how our work is centered.
Amazing. So I have two questions for you here. What do you say? We talk about this concept of early trauma. What do you say to, the skeptic or the one that says, you know what, this is why children shouldn't be in multi-generational households, that they shouldn't see or be exposed to the frailty of age and disease, etc. What do you say to those people?
Well, and you're not wrong. There are several states that have laws going back to the time of disability, and it says that a child could be removed from the home if they were caregiving. But how stupid, maybe that's not the right word, but is that because who's going to take care of the child and who's going to take care of the person that the child was taking care of? It's just doesn't make common sense. So in terms of what do we say? That it can be harmful, but if that child is properly recognized and supported, it can be very impactful and empowering, and it gives them life skills that they have for the rest of their lives. It gives them value for the work that they're doing, their unpaid labor, mind you, that they're doing at home, and it puts a whole different mindset. And so the work that we do with the children today is not only, helpful for them today, but also for tomorrow, to prevent some of the actual suffering that I incurred in my younger adult life.
So, do you offer training for the children in terms of how to
Yeah.
recognize a geriatric emergency,
Yeah, we do.
CPR, all the things?
So what we do is we have a partnership with the school district. We identify the children beginning in sixth grade. And you're probably familiar with the level of care scale or level of burden, which we've modified a little bit for the children. So, a child who maybe sees their grandparent once a week and does laundry would not be eligible for our program. So typically, the kids are in of the 5 levels of responsibility. They're in the top 3 levels. So essentially, they pretty much spend at least 20 hours a week and do at least one ADL. And so we have developed a curriculum of skills building. Our team is of family specialists or social workers. So they're assigned to different schools and they meet with the kids to do groups. We looked at the top diagnoses of the care receivers. So we do lunch and learn activities in the schools, which are open to not only the whole school, but also school staff, because many of them, with us women being primary caregivers and most teachers are women, schools are not good about recognizing them as family caregivers. This provides an opportunity for them to also learn about some resources and ways that they may get help. And so I'm sure you're aware how our government supports family caregivers, but you have to be 18 or older. And which is just not right, because look at our nation has focused on DEI,
Yeah.
and yet excluding the children is the antithesis of what that's supposed to be. And so essentially there's reverse age discrimination,
Mm,
and
mm.
that's one of the things that needs to change.
Attention, healthcare professionals. Are you looking to enhance your skills and stay ahead in your field? Look no further than our ACCME accredited CME courses. Whether you're a doctor, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner, our courses are tailored to meet your needs. Why focus on geriatric education, you ask? Because regardless of your specialty, geriatric care is becoming increasingly essential. As our population ages, the demand for competent healthcare professionals in geriatrics is higher than ever before. We don't stop there. Our courses also empower caregivers to partner with you in the care of your patients. We believe that by fostering a strong partnership between healthcare clinicians and caregivers, we can provide the best possible care for our elderly population. So join our impactful caregiving community today. Sign up for our ACCME accredited course instruction and take the first step towards advancing your career and making a difference in the lives of your patients.
Needs to change.
It's interesting too. I'm working on my end with an impactful caregiver bill so that we also are refreshing the family as a whole. So, the adult caregiver that is in a professional capacity sandwiched in a multi-generational home, how are we refreshing that employee, if you will, to free them up for caregiving, tasks? So that's expanding across, even the COVID accommodations that we had, maybe more remote work, special accommodations so that the employee has, or that caregiver has more flexibility to handle both ends of the spectrum, both the older adult person and the child in the home or children in the home. So yeah, there's a lot of policy work to be done there.
Yeah, there is. And in that process, I'll take you back to the UK when they included a question on the census about what they call their young carers, and it was very underreported. And so, why was that? Because the adult often doesn't recognize the impact on the, and the child often doesn't share their own feelings and what they're going through because they see the parent is overwhelmed and they don't want to add to it.
That's so important. It's a note for me too, as a caregiver myself. Yes.
Well, and
to check in with the kids, to check in with the kids.
If the don't forget there's the fear factor.
Mm-hmm.
But there's I always remember this one young man in one of our schools, and we get parental consent for them to participate. We called his mom and she said, but I'm the caregiver. Well, does he do this, this, and this? Oh yeah. And especially for caregivers that are employed and the children, take over early in the morning or late in the afternoon before their parent gets home.
Yes, so this really resonates with me as a personal and professional caregiver and mom with two tykes, 7 and 11. Mom is 88 with vascular dementia. So it really is our responsibility as well to guard their hearts, if you will, to gain what they're feeling. Because it really struck the chord when you said, hey, the child may not emote because he sees or he or she sees the stress that you may be going through as a parent.
Exactly.
Okay, so okay. So tell me about the fun. What do you do for fun with the children?
Okay, so we do the groups in school and the educational stuff, and then we do a home visit and to see, what else is needed by the family. Because if we can reduce stress on the family, there's that ripple effect onto the child.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we look, we provide tutoring, we provide respite, and our respite is youth directed. So some of our kids really don't mind some of the caregiving tasks, but they hate cleaning the house. So we've included, we've traded off that physical respite, like a home health aide would do, to a once a month home cleaning, which is good
Nice.
for the health and the environment and all that.
The organization, all the things.
Yeah.
Such amazing work. Such amazing
And
work.
the kids often don't have time to be a kid. Most of the families that we work with are financially insecure.
Okay.
And so there's not the disposable income to hire help at home. There's also not the disposable income for kids to participate in activities. Because I don't know about the schools that your children go to, but there's often a charge if they're doing
Mm-hmm,
something special.
mm-hmm.
And so, as a result of COVID, we've learned to do some activities virtually, but otherwise, we'll have like a family picnic. We have an overnight camp, and we call it Camp Treasure. And that's because the kids are a treasure for us and to help them to recognize the treasure within. So it's just one night. And it's only for middle school because we can't get into that overnight with the high school kids.
Right, right.
And and so, but at camp, they could have a campfire with s'mores, and there's swimming and kayaking and archery, and fishing. So, things that the kids don't automatically get to do. And then if we have the funds, we take them. Like there's a place called the Rapids here, and it's a water park. So something like that. That one of the benefits is that with our groups in school, kids learn who else in their school is also a caregiver. But then when they do activities with kids from the other school, it's like the world opens up. They realize, yeah, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, they're
I'm
not alone. Yes.
not alone. And that's so important.
Yes. And it furthers the heart work as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Connection, community, amazing. So, what is the future? Do you hope to model your program across the country,
So people,
internationally?
reached in, but a big problem is funding. If we had begun this work someplace else, in Nebraska, Iowa, wherever, we've been blessed to have people who have funded us so far, but that's not going to continue forever. And government support and recognition. So we were able to get a question onto what's called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey here in Florida. It's just one caregiving question, but it showed among public, middle, and high school students there were more than 290,000 in Florida alone. We know that there's more than 5.4 million in the country. So at that same time, we looked at how many children, and this is of all ages, who were in foster care, 15,000. How many children of all ages were homeless? 95,000. And
Wow.
and for those two groups, there's special supports. Why are these children being ignored?
It's for lack of knowledge, right? For lack of knowledge.
Exactly. That's
It's
why I'm so
incredible.
happy to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really educated and empowered myself, even being in the know, but learning so much more about your work is really inspiring. So give us, you know, do you partner with leaders in terms of offering, remote consultations, way to
So,
kind of take your model in their own communities, et cetera? Tell
yeah,
us about that.
yeah, reinvent the wheel, right? So, yeah, really, we formed and we've been successful. Our high school graduation rate average over 10 years is 98.3%. And so we had people start to reach in, and they may have had seed money, but then they didn't have the ongoing money and had to shut the program down, which was unfortunate. However, we developed like a nonprofit affiliate model, which is affordable and allows us to provide what we've learned. We're now in our 18th year to them. So one of our newest ones who's becoming very active is in Colorado. And it's with an organization that was a for-profit company that spun off a nonprofit to work with the children, and it's called the Colorado Alliance of Caregiving Youth. So that's one thing. We're working with the whole state of Rhode Island, which is about the size of Palm Beach County, where they have modified their education policy regarding graduation and how caregiving youth and kids who now, because of the stupid economy, might have to work to help their families.
Yeah,
Um, and then there's places in other parts of the country that are doing this work. So we did get some funding to begin the Caregiving Youth Institute. We have a Caregiving Youth Research Collaborative, which includes people from, I don't know, about 13 states and universities. But for the future, yes, this issue is national, and we need to facilitate change.
absolutely. So tell us your website, how organizations, individuals, thought leaders can connect with you.
Yeah, our website is simply aacy.org. So if you think of YMCA, think about
AACA.org. Yes.
AACY.
Oh, AACY, excuse me, .org. Yes.
.org.
Okay.
So there's a lot of information on there, papers, videos, pictures of the kids. So that's
Amazing.
a great place to start.
Amazing.
And info at AACY or Connie at AACY.org are the ways to reach us. We have an 800 number. We have a regular telephone too. So
Amazing. Dr. Connie, I've really enjoyed our conversation and, support your work. I think that it's tremendous work that you're doing. And it's a continuing legacy of what began in you, which I think is even more inspiring, really. So an honor to sit with you today. Any parting words for my CarePod audience?
Yeah, I want to hear about that bill that you're working on, and to be sure that it includes caregiving youth.
Yes, I have definitely taken note. That is noted. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.